On today's episode of Locked On Angels, we're recapping the second straight strong start from, checks notes, Tyler Anderson. Wow. Okay, let's talk about it. We're also helping the Angels do the right thing with Nolan Schanuel, and we're responding to the scoring change that impacted Schanuel's on-base streak and what Wayne Randazzo had to say about that change. It's time to get locked on with Mike and John, and this is Locked On Angels.
You are Locked On Angels, your daily Los Angeles Angels podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. You can find us anywhere you get your podcasts, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and SiriusXM by searching Locked On Angels. And if you'd like to give back to the Super Halo Bros for all the Super Halo content, here's some things that you can do. Leave us a rate and a review on Apple Podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that thumbs up button. And if you're not subscribed already, please subscribe, become a Locked On Everydayer. And whether you're watching or listening, come over to YouTube, leave a comment. It's one of the best ways to get in touch with us and be a part of the conversation here on Locked On Angels. And today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Download the Game Time app today, create an account, use our promo code, you're welcome, Locked On MLB for $20 off your first purchase.
Happy Tuesday to you, and thanks for being here for this episode of Locked On Angels, where it's your team every day. You've got the Frisch Brothers here with you, a.k.a. the Super Halo Bros. My name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
We're heading into our third season here at Locked On Angels, and we're happy to be with you. I think our anniversary is coming up, actually, Mike. Is the 11th or so?
April 11th. That was our
go.
first show in 2022.
Love it, love it. Hey, we're here talking Angels baseball 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, every single weekday. We appreciate you being a Locked On Everydayer with us. As somebody hashtag like Everyday Bros. I love that. Everyday Halo Bros.
I love it.
We should get that going. Hey, Mike, on today's show, what do the Halos need to do with Nolan Schanuel? Everybody's got a lot of opinions on what needs to happen with him. What did Wayne Randazzo have to say about that scoring change regarding Nolan Schanuel? And how did he absolutely torch MLB? We'll talk about that one. And then first, let's recap last night's game against the Tampa Bay Rays. The Angels won 7-1 on the back of a strong Tyler Anderson start. Talk about it, Mike.
I know it's early, but I did love this tweet from yesterday. How about Tyler Anderson? Because he's well on his way to pitching really well this year.
Pretty sure I saw somebody call themselves that on Twitter, and it's always like ironic handles like Tyler Anderson season or like MVP Rengifo, you know what I mean? So it's no longer a joke. How about that?
Right. So he goes 7 scoreless innings last night, John. 2 starts in a row that he's done this. 4 hits, 1 walk, 3 Ks. He used all 3 of his pitches really well. Gooby said he stayed out of the heart of the zone, which was really important. He used all 4 quadrants. He was really high in the zone at necessary points and then was throwing low and out of the zone with a change. And then he really trusted the defense behind him, John. And one play that stood out to me was a hard ground ball to second base. Rengifo was kind of shifted over, not the shift because you can't do that, but kind of shifted over to his right towards second base. And the ball was going to right field and Rengifo gets to it. Of course, he has a really strong arm, so he throws a bullet to first base. And that was a really important moment because you saw the defense picking up Tyler Anderson. They were ready to go. And this is what happens when you throw strikes. This is what happens when you throw strike 1. This is what happens when you're focused on racing towards 2 strikes and possibly getting these batters out. It keeps the defense on their toes, helps them to be ready. Pay attention, Patrick Sandoval, because this is what the defense needs to do behind you if you're going to be throwing strikes. But John, this guy, Tyler Anderson, I'm a fan. I can't believe I'm saying that out loud, but I'm a fan. He's pitched really well.
Well, Mike, you know it's the Tampa Bay Rays, and they're 5-6. So let's wait until the Angels play the Dodgers of the Astros. Oh, wait, the Astros have a worse record than us, too. So who are we supposed to wait until the Angels play before we can say, hey, Tyler Anderson did pretty good out there, right?
Well, here's the thing. Anytime that you get your name mentioned with Nolan Ryan, you know that you're doing pretty well. Per Elias Sports, Anderson's 14-inning scoreless streak is tied for the second longest to begin a season by an I almost said LA starter. Angels starter. I'm reading it verbatim. The other is, of course, Nolan Ryan. He had 16 straight innings in 1978. I was not born, and neither were you, John, and so I'm sure it was great. But Tyler Anderson is now in the same category as Nolan Ryan, Johnny.
Wow. Yeah, and the first Angels starting pitcher to have back-to-back 7 scoreless inning starts to start a season. So he made some halo history. That was really cool to see. 17 swings and misses, Mike, and 16 called strikes. Should have been 17 called strikes because he got one in the last batter he faced, but they didn't give it to him before he surrendered that hit that took him out of the game. But 33 called strikes plus whiffs. That's what you want to see from a guy like Tyler Anderson.
Johnny, do you think that Barry Enright's unlocked something, or is this just Tyler Anderson getting back to some of the basics, some of his mechanics? What do you think this is?
It's a little bit of both. It's Barry Enright telling him, hey, do what you did that was successful before, and not telling him to be a swing and miss guy, I should say, like they were trying to get Aaron Loup to be. Aaron Loup was a contact guy.
Yeah.
Tyler Anderson struck out 3, Mike. And so it wasn't like he was striking everybody out. He was getting swings and misses, but he was also inducing way more soft contact than strikeouts. But the emphasis on the strikeout last year, because they were so afraid of defense, they were so afraid of not having the shift, just totally boggles my mind when coaching staffs try to get people away from what they're good at. It's like making Reed Detmers a pitch to contact guy like they did briefly last year. Let me talk about what happened in this one, Mike. Bottom of the first, Rendon singles, his first of 3 hits that night.
3 hits, John.
Trout
hit.
Triple. I know. He still has it. And you're right. A lot of people I already saw say, he's got a hit in every game since the standing ovation. I'm on your side where it's like, Tony's going to hit.
Right. He will get some hits, right? But if the Angels want to take credit, the fans want to take credit for the standing ovation and why he's doing well, you take all the credit.
Right.
You stood up and you cheered. So good for you.
Good for you. Trout tripled, Mike. And it scored Rendon from first, then Ward singled, which scored 2. So the Angels take the lead 2-0 right off the bat. Bottom of the third, Trout hits his 5th home run, 423 feet, second RBI of the game, 6 RBIs since the start of the season. Then Anderson in the top of the 4th got into some trouble with a walk and a double, but he had some great defense behind him, including Drury grabbing a hot shot over at first base. Got a long fly out to center field for the final out. Hoppy threw a runner out at second, and man, he threw it in the perfect spot because Rengifo put his glove where the ball went, and it was just on the leg of the base runner, and that's something that Hoppy's been working on a lot and wants to be a better defensive catcher this season, which we've talked about. That was his struggle last year. He didn't get a lot of playing time, but it is something that he worked on a lot. Bottom of the 5th, Rendon gets his 2nd hit. Moniak doubles, 2nd and 3rd for Trout. He lined out to shortstop, but Ward singled to right field to get 2 more RBIs, made it 5-0. Mike, I really liked in the bottom of the 7th, Sano walked. I like him at number 5. I also like Moniak at number 2, and I like that Luis Rengifo was in this lineup as well. But I felt like Moniak being at number 2 made a lot of sense and something that I hope they stick with, because between him and Rendon, seeing all the pitches that they did the other day between the two of them, it worked out again last night. But Sano walked in the 7th, Drury singled, Rengifo singled and got an RBI. Great to see that. Bottom of the 8th, Rendon had a Tony 2-bagger. Moniak singled and drove him in. Trout blooped a single to right field, got another RBI. Trout's 2nd hit going the other way. Just so good to see some consistency from the lineup, especially after we talked about that yesterday. And they went against Zach Eflin, Mike, who is the number 1 starter for the Rays. And they really got to him. And he just beat the Rangers in his last start. So the fact that they were able to put 5 up on him was just really great to see.
Yeah, super great to see. I love Moniak in that 2nd spot. I like Moniak there, not because he's going to take some pitches, but because you have somebody like Rendon who is going to work 8 to 10 pitch at bat. And then Moniak has the ability to crush the baseball. When he gets his pitch, he normally doesn't miss it. I know that he's now just starting to hit, but his double last night was one of those moments where you're like, okay, yeah, that's the Moniak that I remember that went on a hot streak. And if you can put him in there in between Rendon and Trout, we already saw the impact last night with Trout having a few opportunities to have some RBIs and knock some runners in, which, by the way, I'm going to take credit for that, because on yesterday's show, I did say, hey, Trout, we need you to come through in those moments. And then immediately he triples, right? And he goes to right field. And so Trout, from one mic to the other, great job.
Trout wants to get Trout to the playoffs, and he needs to get Trout to the playoffs.
And that was so much fun.
Like before the game, the Angels announced a couple of moves. They selected the contracts of Carson Fulmer and Hunter Strickland. We did see Strickland get into that last inning because it was 7-0. Good way to warm him up. Gave up 3 hits and a run. They designated Levon Soto and Zach Plesac for assignment. maybe they're hoping they pass through waivers, but they do
Yeah.
have a week to trade either of those guys. Chase Silseth has right elbow inflammation, so that's concerning. He said he wasn't recovering as fast as he normally does after a start. And then Gio Zuniga has a pectoral strain. They're both on the 15-day injured list. Silseth's velo dipped yesterday during the game, and he said he was trying to work through some things. So they're still waiting on the MRI as of this recording. Said he felt something on a few breaking balls yesterday. Didn't think anything of it until after the game. But when today, or I should say yesterday came, he was still feeling something. Jose Soriano is going to start for the Angels on Wednesday against the Rays. They have him stretched out to about 60 pitches so far. Again, it takes some time for a guy to work up the amount of pitches he can throw, moving from a bullpen guy to a starting pitcher. So we'll see how that one goes. See what happens when he gets a fresh start on the mound as opposed to coming in for long relief like he did on Friday. That's actually going to move Canning back to Friday's game and give him some extra time to rest and prepare. Mike, highlight for you, maybe it's Anderson, maybe it's Trout, maybe it's Rendon. What do you think about last night's game?
Trout hitting 2 balls to right field. That is huge. That's when Trout is going at Trout speed. That's when Trout is Mike Trout. And I want to see more of that. I love the home runs. I love that he has 5 home runs in now 10 games. That's awesome. And I love that he looks healthy. But the biggest thing for Mike Trout is that he's going to do 2 things. 1, he's going to go oppo, and 2, you saw him run around the bases, and you saw him do that without any issues. And his body looks really good. And I'm excited to see a healthy, strong Mike Trout. I know he's 32, and I know people are like, he's on the tail end. I don't think so. I think we've just gotten really used to seeing an injured Mike Trout and not really able to perform at peak level, even though he said he was feeling good last year. He wasn't at peak level simply because he was really struggling with some of the high fastballs. He seems to have adjusted this year. And then there was a good conversation on the TV broadcast about Trout and Johnny Washington having some really good conversations and building a really healthy relationship. And you can already see Mike Trout adjusting to how they're pitching to him. And he's taking advantage of those breaking balls in the bottom of the zone and even fastballs, John. He's not chasing that high fastball like he was last year, and he's not getting tied up. And I think that that's big. He seems to be, and this is the Mike Frisch eye test, seems like he's a bit more upright when he's at the plate instead of bending over. And I wonder and he's got his hands a little bit higher. And so I wonder if that's allowing him to get to the ball a little bit quicker when it's up and in or when it's high in the zone. But overall, that was my highlight from last night, seeing Mike Trout be Mike Trout.
I loved watching his at-bats. Even when he was fouling stuff off, it just gave me the vibes of, Trout's back. He's working good.
This is the guy we've gotten used to over the last 10 years or so, right?
That's exactly what it was. Mike, for me, I think making the adjustments to the lineup, especially after the conversation we had yesterday, I know that some of the decisions that Ron Washington has made in terms of playing time and the lineup and whatnot has been a little bit frustrating. But I will say nothing seems to be too stuck. He doesn't seem too stubborn to make some changes. And obviously Drury's struggling in the 5th spot. So they moved Sano up. And I question that because Sano hasn't had the most success, but he did have a good game last night.
He's walking a lot too, Johnny. That's really, I think, a key for Miguel Sano. He's going to get his big home runs, but him walking a lot, I think, is really showing some maturity at the plate and his eye for where the strike zone is.
Absolutely. So I love seeing Mickey Moniak up at 2. I mean, that's where they were putting Aaron Hicks. And if Hicks isn't going to be in the game against the lefty, then put Moniak in that 2nd spot against the righty. Love seeing that. Love seeing the changes being made as they go from game to game. And again, not being too stubborn, not sticking in your old ways or habits or anything like that. So that's refreshing to see. Hey, we want to thank you for making Locked On Angels your first listen every single day. The Angels are playing the Rays again tonight at the Big A, 6:38 Pacific time. You can catch every pitch of the Angels hometown broadcast on SiriusXM with the SXM app. Just search Angels. Coming up on Locked On Angels, I've got some thoughts on the scoring change and what Wayne Randazzo, the Angels play-by-play announcer, had to say about them. We'll talk about all of that coming right up.
Johnny, Saturday night, we were in Anaheim, my son and I, and we went to the Honda Center, and it was packed. 20,000 people in that place, and it was for comedian Nate Bargatze. And I don't know if you know Nate Bargatze.
Love that guy. He's
really
like
funny.
A modern Seinfeld.
Yes, he's very Jerry Seinfeld, so of course I'm a huge fan. And I got our tickets on Game Time. And what's great about Game Time is that it's not just a ticketing app for sports, it's a ticketing app for everything. And I used our promo code and we save money, and you can too. Here's what's cool about Game Time. They're obsessed with finding ways to save you money. They've got last minute deals. So if you're sitting around going, you know what, Angels are playing well, maybe we should go, right? Like you can get deals on the Game Time app and you can save up to 60% off of tickets for Angel games and a whole lot more. They have concerts and comedy and theater, and you can save with some exclusive in-app flash deals on select seats ahead of the time. And what I love about their zone deals is that you can choose a section in the seat, and then Game Time is going to find a deal for you. And if you find a better deal, they're going to give you 110% of the difference. One of the best features, though, is the all-in pricing. Like you're not getting tickets going, wow, those are cheap. I like that, right? And then at the very end, you're like, $400? what happened, right? Game Time doesn't have any surprises. They have all-in pricing right up front, and I love that. And then they have Game Time ticket coverage. So your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. I am not somebody that returns food. I am not somebody that takes things back. I'm not somebody, if somebody gets it wrong, I'm not somebody to bring it up. It's why I married my wife. She does that for me. But what I love about Game Time is that if something goes wrong or if something's not right, you don't have to be nervous about taking it back and going, hey, this isn't right. And they'll go, cool, we can take care of it. I love that about Game Time. Now, through April 14th, so just a couple of days from now, all users, including you, can get $20 off any MLB purchase of $150 or more in the Game Time app. Just use this code, First Pitch. That's First Pitch, all one word, all caps, $20 off. So download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed.
This is the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every single day. Locked On Everydayers, it's time to make the switch to your all 24/7, 365, all day long sports to Locked On Sports Today, because I know you've got, your regular sports viewing on ESPN or Fox Sports, and they're just screaming at each other. Listen, you want to head on over to Locked On Sports Today because it's 24/7, 365. They have all the top stories of the day across the sports world. It brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news. It's streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every single day. Speaking of your team every day, the Angels are playing the Rays tonight, 6:38 Pacific time at the Big A. You can catch every pitch of the Angels hometown broadcast on SiriusXM with the SXM app. Just search Angels.
A lot of conversation about Nolan Schanuel, and we talked a little bit, just a skosh, yesterday on Locked On Angels. But in this moment, we need to tease it out. We need to work it through, right? So let me reset it if you're new to Locked On Angels or you're a new Angel fan and you're not sure about Nolan Schanuel, because there are some people that weren't aware of what was happening, and John has a point about that in just a moment.
Yes.
So Nolan Schanuel had a 36-game on-base streak to start his career. And then in one of those games, Schanuel got a hit against the O's that Major League Baseball changed in the scorebook 6 days later. So that was game number 30 where he got on base. They played 6 more games where he got on base, but then they go back and said, no, actually, that was an error. That wasn't an actual hit, which is ridiculous, and we'll get to it in a minute. But then Wayne Randazzo, Angels broadcaster and play-by-play guy, who is fantastic, by the way, he had about a minute and a half where he just went off on that scoring change and a few other things. And I just appreciated what he had to say. And I appreciated that it wasn't just about the scoring change and how it directly affected the Angels, but he talked about a few things. And John, when you and I talked about it off air, you were fired up, and you mentioned it on yesterday's show that you have some thoughts. And so, John, the floor is yours.
Yeah, let me break it down what he had to say. He said,
break it down.
When you have this awesome story of a guy who was playing college baseball earlier in 2023 and then is in the majors later in 2023, he's got this incredible on-base streak, and it's fun. And maybe it didn't get a lot of attention, but it's fun, and it's something that is exciting for the game of baseball. Hey, look at this guy who was in college. He gets called up right away after getting drafted. And so that was kind of Wayne's point. But he said, in the midst of a global superstar in the middle of a gambling scandal, the A's moving out of town, the crappy uniforms that all the players are complaining about, the rash of pitching injuries that the MLBPA is starting to look into and kind of wondering if it has something to do with the pitch clock. Wayne just ran down all of the nonsense around Major League Baseball and said, why in the world would you go back and kill this really fun story and this really fun streak? Now, whether you want to argue it was a hit or not, totally fine. But I think what everybody is missing the point here is that you had this really cool story of this guy that nobody knew about.
Yeah.
And that's exactly Wayne's point. I had Dodger fans on our social media saying, well, it's just an Angels thing. Angels are just crying about it. And I said, use your brain for a second and understand and actually listen to what Wayne Randazzo had to say, because it has nothing to do with the jersey on somebody's back. If this was a Pittsburgh guy or a Nationals guy, it would have been a cool story. It doesn't matter that it's the Angels. The problem is that you have all these nonsense stories around Major League Baseball. Mike, we had a person call us on last Friday's show, or they wrote us for Fan Mail Friday. They said, why does MLB have such a hard time, promoting itself? And how can it compete against the NFL? And this is exactly the point, because nobody knew that this really fun story was happening. All they know is that, Ippei stole money from Shohei. The uniforms are see-through. The owners are upset about the A's and their move to Vegas, even though all the owners approved the move to Vegas because all 30 teams approved it. Like, it's just so absolutely ridiculous. And it just goes to show that Wayne Randazzo was 110% right when he said MLB continues to get in its own way. It continues to shoot itself in the foot. And then when you have a fun story like this and 3 former players go back and go, well, maybe that really wasn't a hit. Or, I mean, Gilby and Wayne were like, that was a hit. And in the rule book, it should have been a hit. And so they don't know which of the 3 guys decided it was not a hit anymore and it was more of an error. But that's neither here nor there. The fact is, like I said, you have this fun story. MLB does nothing with it. They continue to shoot themselves in the foot. They continue to promote, players and teams and situations that are just detrimental to the game of baseball. They continue to, Wayne didn't mention this, but they continue to black out people who can't watch their home team because of MLB rules and restrictions that they worked out with the cable suppliers. And now the cable companies are having trouble staying in business. It's just absolutely insane to me. And it just cracks me up that you had this really cool story in Nolan Schanuel, and MLB continues to cut stuff off at the head like that. But then the dialogue around baseball is all of these scandals and stories and things like that. And let me say something else while I'm on the topic. Okay. Are you ready for this, Mike? Mm-hmm. Because we're going to get some heat and I don't care. Wayne casually said your global superstar is embroiled in a betting scandal. And everybody got upset because they said, he threw Ohtani under the bus because he's just trying to make a point. No, first of all, he didn't mention him by name. He gave him the credit of your global superstar. And by definition, Shohei Ohtani is embroiled in a betting scandal. Yeah, he probably got swindled out of all of that money from Ippei. That circumstances are pretty clear in that regard. But the fact is, by definition, he's embroiled in the scandal. Mike, I'm 35 this year and I turned 36, and I'll say, in 2024, I'm 35 years old. Well, John, for 9 days at the end of the year, you'll be 36 because your birthday's on December 22nd. Like, by definition, I'm a 35-year-old person, even though I'll be 36. Like, it's just so silly to me that in this whole stream of consciousness that Wayne Randazzo had, that's calling out MLB for all of its faults, that you're going to cling on to the one thing about Shohei Ohtani. Like, until the guy walks on water, he's not above reproach. And he wasn't even insulting Shohei Ohtani in that moment. He's trying to make the point that MLB continues to shoot itself in the foot. And that's all that I have to say about that. So there you go.
Yeah, I think what you pointed to is really important, is that you've got the human element in all of this. And when it comes to fans have a tendency to lean in a direction that they don't need to lean in. They have a tendency to lean in a direction that is negative and not supportive or helpful or positive or see the whole picture. I think MLB is led by humans, and they can't see the whole picture. And this is the reality of why this sport, even though it's fun, it's why the reality that this sport is struggling. When you look at basketball, for example, somebody who's about ready to get a triple double or a quad double, right? Like they have double stats in 4 different categories. They'll actually allow that player to get that 1 extra assist or that 1 extra rebound. In the NFL, when Michael Strahan was going to break the sack record, Brett Favre rolled out and kind of allowed him to sack him, right? Like, because that's a cool story. And in this place, in this moment with Nolan Schanuel, baseball is just blind to what's in front of them. Celebrate the Schanuels, celebrate the Julio Rodriguezes, celebrate these guys instead of allowing the narrative to be negative, negative, negative. And that's what Randazzo was pointing out, is that MLB is not known for anything that's woohoo. It's everything that's boohoo, right?
That's fantastic. Look, it's the human element. You talk about it. Baseball is run by people who don't like baseball. And that's the problem with MLB. Your commissioner was a lawyer. He's not a baseball fan, and he can pretend to be all he wants. But at the end of the day, baseball is run by people who don't love baseball, and that's a problem.
If you love baseball, you probably love fantasy baseball. And John is the king of fantasy baseball here on Locked On Angels because, one, I just don't have brain capacity to pay attention to it every single day. And I appreciate that my brother's brain is a lot bigger and smarter than mine. So I admit that. He's really good at it. And if you're really good at fantasy, you should try out Prize Picks because it's the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. And they're the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. You can win money, which is fantastic. And you're not playing against people like John, who's, a fantasy shark. You're playing against just you and the numbers. Here's how. You pick between 2 and 6 players and decide if that player is going to produce more than or less than the projected stat that's listed on Prize Picks. So it might say, Mike Trout, 1 home run. You say, less than or more than. Right now, you'd probably say more than because Trout is tearing it up. That's how easy Prize Picks is. It includes strikeouts, RBIs, first inning runs, and you can win up to 100 times your money. So I would check out Prize Picks right now. Download the app, enter our promo code LOCKEDONMLB, and they're going to give you a first deposit match of up to $100. So download the app, sign in, use our promo code LOCKEDONMLB, get a first deposit match of up to $100. Join Prize Picks today. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy.
Mike, I'm all verklempt from that last segment. So take a swig of water and take us away because I need a break.
Let's talk about Schanuel for just a moment because there's a lot of discussion in amongst all of this like scoring change stuff. People are like, yeah, but he's hitting like under 100 and he's not doing well. And what the heck is that about? And so our friends over at Angels Win had a great tweet from yesterday. They said that Schanuel's OPS is 482 entering last night's game. And all of these discussions are, hey, you should bench him. But then they compared Schanuel to some of the other players. And their comparison was really in the context of people get off to slow starts. So they said Julio Rodriguez, for example, has a 493 OPS through 10 games. So he's about 11 points better than Schanuel. By the way, a 493 OPS is terrible. You don't want a 490. You need to be in the 800s, right? That's where you want to be. 700s maybe, but 800s is good. 900s is great. So
700 to 800 is like pretty normal.
Yeah. So here's the following qualifying players that have an OPS lower than Schanuel: Lindor, Hayes, Varsho, Outman, Encarnacio Strand, Drury, Rendon, Castellanos, McNeil, JJ Crawford, Nimmo, Verdugo, Torkelson. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. They mentioned some young rookies as well, Horner and Bryant and Parker Meadows and Henry Davis. The point is that people get off to a slow start. And to say, let's get this guy out of the lineup after playing in 9 games, he didn't play last night because he's struggling, I don't think is wise. And here's why. Giving him a rest is important, but I think Schanuel has proven in college ball and even in the minor leagues that he can hit. This is his first time doing a full season and playing spring training and getting ready for the season. And yeah, pitchers are going to figure him out. You have to give him time to figure things out and adjust back. That's how you know if this player is a quality player. Through his first 29 games last season, 732 OPS. He had a 750 OPS during spring. And Johnny, he's only had 27 at-bats so far. So I'm of the opinion that Nolan Schanuel needs maybe a day off or two, and I'm glad that he had a day off yesterday. I think you give him a day off and then put him back in the lineup. Maybe put him not in a part of the lineup where it's needed and necessary for him to come through, but maybe a little bit lower, like the 6th spot is where he was really kind of thriving at the beginning of the year and in spring, or maybe even lower than that, right? Because then you're going to have somebody who is getting on base and drawing a lot of walks. So I would suggest and recommend that the Angels continue to run with Schanuel at first base. Let him figure some things out. Give him a day or two to get his head right. The guy just needs some more at-bats and needs some more options, and I don't think you have a better option. Plus, you want this guy to be good, so give him a shot to be good.
Yeah. Hey, how about we don't change what got him to the show, Mike? How about we don't change the fact that he is a singles hitter. He is a doubles guy. He is an on-base guy. He knows when to swing and when not to swing. How about we all stop clamoring for Nolan Schanuel's got to add more power. He's got to add more upright to uppercut to his bat. He's got to add more launch angle. Like, how about the guy just gets on base and hits 280 and scores a ton of runs because people behind him are driving him in? Is that such a bad thing? Do we need every first baseman in the league to be 300 pounds and hitting 45 home runs? No, because we already have that with somebody named Mike Trout in center field. The Angels are perfectly capable of scoring a ton of runs without needing to rely on the home run, because you know when that didn't work? Last year when they relied on the home run, they were like 4th in the league in home runs as a combined team, and look where they ended up, 73 wins. And so my point here is, how about we don't change who Nolan Schanuel is? Let Nolan be Nolan. Let him continue to do the things that he does well. Let him continue to work counts and get on base and hit singles and hit guys over and make contact. I think that's perfectly fine. I think we need to stop trying to change who Nolan Schanuel is.
Hey, thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. And the Angels and Nolan Schanuel play the Rays today at 6:38 Pacific time. And you can catch every pitch of the Angels' hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Just search Angels.
Hey, give us a follow at Locked On Angels on Twitter and at Super Halo Bros on Twitter and Instagram. If you're watching or listening, come on over to today's show. Find it on YouTube and get in the comments section. The best way to be part of the conversation. Mike, what do we have on deck for Wednesday's show?
Well, I know that the Angels don't have anybody in the minor leagues that are any good, but there are two guys that John and I have been paying attention to. One you know, and one you need to know, and we're going to share what they did in their last start tomorrow on Locked On Angels.
Looking forward to that. We hope you'll come back and join us. Until then, my name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
Thanks for being here with us, and we'll see you back here on Wednesday. Mike,
John, when there's an Angel game and then there's something at Honda Center, traffic is ridiculous in Anaheim. Oh my